All right, art students, we are here looking for a reference image for our grid drawing, and we are using Pixabay, so they are royalty-free images that you are allowed to use. You will not be allowed to use Google Images. And for this assignment, we're looking for a picture of a person, an animal, or even a landscape. So you're going to choose one of those three options, and you're going to search for your image here. And I'm going to go ahead and just type in Bavarian cow since this is the one I was looking for earlier. I should be able to hopefully find the image already downloaded. And you'll scroll through, you'll find lots of different options. When you find something you like, you can click on it. And then all you need to do is click on download. You don't have to sign in, but click download. I usually like to do a little bit higher option. You don't have to go all the way up to the top option, but just a little bit higher quality, and click download. Now, on Google Classroom, there will be a link to a website called Photopea, and you can click on the link. I'm just going to start over here. Click on the link because we want to turn our photo black and white, and we're using Photopea to do that. If your photo is already black and white in Pixabay, then you don't have to do this step. I'm going to go to Open from Computer when I'm in Photopea. I'm going to click on the image that I downloaded, which is this one. And all you need to do then is go up to where it says Image, then go to Adjustments, and then Black and White. I'm going to move this over so we can see it. You can fine tune it here. So here's where we can kind of adjust the reds, make them lighter or darker. You don't want to totally blow out your image or, oversaturate it or make it too dark or too light. This is where you really kind of find a balance. You're looking for that range of values, darkest darks, the color black, all the way to the color white, which I'm seeing already. So this has a good range of value already. And then I will click OK. Now you're not done yet. This will not auto-save. So we need to save this and upload this to the assignment that is labeled, grid drawing reference photo. You're going to upload it there so I can print it for you. You can theoretically also print it yourself, but if you want me to do the printing, you will need to upload it there. So from here, we're going to go to File, Export As, and then you're going to choose one of these two options. I usually prefer JPEG because it's a little bit smaller file size. It's easier and quicker to upload. So I'll click JPEG. You can give it a name if you want, like this one I'll just call Cow 2 because I already have a Cow 1. Okay, and then you'll go to that Google Classroom assignment, the grid drawing reference image assignment, and you're going to upload your reference image there. It's probably the easiest points you can get. Once you have your reference image, so once I am done printing your image for you, then we'll go to the next step, which I will show you now. Okay, I have my image printed, and you will then grab one of these sheets that has the grid printed on it. It's a transparency sheet, and it doesn't really matter the dimensions of your photo. Like your photo might be going this way, which is fine. So it doesn't really matter. It just needs to be nice and large. So we'll print those on paper, and then you can lay your grid on top. Now, it may be in your best interest to like move the corner of your grid over a little bit, depending on what you have printed. Like here, I feel like it fits pretty well. If I move this up to the top here, like this is all empty, which is fine. And then this still fits, but then this will just be cut off at the bottom. I know it's kind of hard to see there, but right there. So you can kind of decide the layout, but essentially we're doing an equal number of boxes on here on our paper that are seen here, but your dimensions may vary. I believe it's 10 and then by 8, so it's going to vary depending on the dimensions of your paper. So let's go, I'm going to go to the corner here. Let's do this first. We'll do that shape. You could also just center it and then just imagine that that's just blank space, but I'm going to move it to the corner. And this is where we're going to take a little tape. We're going to tape this transparency to our reference image. And you're going to do this in a couple places so it doesn't move. If you don't want the reference to move, otherwise that kind of defeats the purpose. That's pretty close. Oops. So here I'll just kind of tape it from the back. We'll do the same thing on this edge. Just lining it up as best as you can. A little bit of overlap there, which isn't too bad. I'll flip it over and we'll just tape it like this. So in a couple places, just so it's not going to move on us. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now we're going to do a quick exercise just to kind of see the shapes of our image. So I have a dry erase marker. Make sure it's dry erase and you're not using Sharpie or anything. And I'm just going to look at kind of the contours. Hopefully you can see it without too much glare there with the shine. But with this dry erase, we're going to erase this when we're done. But I'm just going to be tracing around like the outline of my subject matter. And this is to get a feeling for the shape that we're kind of drawing. So I'm going to start by just kind of outlining the side of the cheek of the cow. Here's the nose. You're just creating those outlines. And even better, if you want to flip it around upside down, use those right brain skills. This is even better to kind of get a sense of what these shapes are going to look like or feel like. So you can do it upside down or right side up. It doesn't really make a difference. We're getting a feel for it. So I kind of get a feel for the shape of the nose. It's not just a circle, right? It's kind of this interesting organic shape. The bell, which is something like this. It's a cow with a bell around it. This is the other side of the cow's face. This is where the cow's eye is. And I see that it's mostly black there with some eyelashes. There's going to be some shading involved there. There's a tag with some writing on it. I'll kind of outline that. Do it along this side. So there's definitely some value in this, kind of getting an understanding of what you're going to need to replicate with your pencil. Here I could do maybe a little bit here. There's the stomach. Okay. Now this is where sometimes it helps to kind of take one side of the tape off. Just lift it up for a second. So if I take this up, I just kind of look at what I've traced. This is also a good example of why just tracing is usually not a good idea, right? Because like right now it looks kind of weird, right? I just did those contour lines. There's no shading, there's no detail, so it is kind of a weird mess, right? But visually, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, the cow is more off to the left. There's not going to be as much detail over here. So I'm probably going to start my drawing somewhere around here. I usually like to start in like the upper left or right hand corner, but you can technically start wherever you want. I usually like to start with those major contours, so I'll start in probably one of those boxes where there's a major line, like the top of the head or the ear or the body. I know it's going to be left aligned, so I'm not drawing in the center of my paper. I'm going to be drawing more on the left-hand side. I know the right-hand side, if I compare it, still has some things there, like some rocks and there's some landscape. There's still shading there that I'm going to have to do because that's not white, right? This is white up here. This is gray. So I'm going to be doing some shading of the gray values in the background. But that gives me an idea. Now, this is dry erase, so then you can just erase that because you don't need that drawing anymore. We can put my tape back. So erase that once you kind of get a feel for the shape and kind of where everything is going to line up on your drawing. It's just nice to kind of get rid of the drawing for a second and see. I'm going to re-stick this down, lined up. And actually, I'm probably just going to, instead of doing it on the side, I'm going to put some more tape along the top here. There we go. Let's see, does this line up okay? Just because I do kind of like to be able to lift this up and down. Okay, so now we got to count some boxes. These are 1-inch boxes exactly. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then this is pretty much empty. So that's 7 boxes this way, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it actually goes past that. So we know it's going to be 7 by 10. And I'm just going to write this on some scratch paper to kind of give you an idea. So 7 by 10 inches. Okay. Now we are going to be replicating this on a larger scale. So we will be multiplying these numbers by essentially 1.5 because we're going to make this a little bit bigger. So right now it's just 7 by 10 inches approximately, you know, if you got rid of these boxes and you got rid of this bottom. On our paper, we're going to make it basically 1.5 times bigger. Okay, so instead of doing like 7 times 2, we're going to do 7 times 1.5, 10 times 1.5. Okay, so it's going to take a little bit of some math. So feel free to use like your calculator. If you want to use your Chromebook for this, feel free, or just like write it out like I'm doing. So 7 times 1.5 ends up being 10.5. Okay, and then 10 times 1.5 is 15. So the dimensions of my paper in the end are going to be 10.5 wide and 15 tall. Okay, so I'm still going to have the same number of boxes, but those boxes are going to be bigger. Okay, so the grid is going to be bigger on my paper, and I'm going to show you how you can do that. Okay, I went ahead and I grabbed my paper. This is 12 by 18, so I know you can't see it all the way up and down when it's vertical like that, but it's 12 by 18. You want to make sure you have the right dimensions, so or the right landscape portrait style. So this is a portrait style image. That means it's more vertical, right? If it's more of a landscape image, it'll probably be more horizontal. So in this case, I want my paper to be vertical, and we are going to be doing 10.5 wide by 15 wide. So this is in inches, right? Because we had started with 7 by 10 and we multiplied it by 1.5. So we're making our boxes slightly larger. These are 1-inch boxes, so we're going to be measuring 1.5-inch boxes. And this is where it can get a little bit tricky, so you can always call me over or ask a friend for help. You are going to be using a ruler, and we're going to be measuring on both sides. Now, this paper is bigger than what we really need. We're just going to start here, though. What I like to do is I like to put I'm going to move this out of the way. I like to put my ruler at the top of my paper, making sure it's nice and even. You want it to be as even as you can get it, and we're going to measure every 1.5 inches. So we go to 0, we go to the 1. We're looking for the next largest line that isn't a number. And we'll make a little tick mark, okay? And I can keep this here. I don't have to keep moving it or anything. So here is my 1/2 inch, and then here's my inch. So here I'm going to make a mark. So it's not a number here. There's a number there. So 1.5, then I make a mark at the 3, then I'll make a mark at the 4.5, then I'll make a mark at the 6. They should all be fairly even here. Then make a mark at the 7.5. I'll make a mark at the 9, 10.5, and then let's take a look. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7 times 1.5. We're going to cut off that excess. Okay, so don't worry about the excess that we see there. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring my paper down so I can see the bottom. I'll move this a little bit. Okay, same exact thing. I'm going to hold my ruler right where it needs to be. It should be exactly 12. And we're going to measure every 1.5. So 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5, 9, and 10.5. Now, the reason we do both sides is because now we can line our ruler up. And I'm actually going to just turn my paper this way so you can see it a little better. Use your nice long 18-inch ruler. I can line it up with those tick marks that we did, and we can start drawing our grid. Now here's where it's really important. You want to keep your ruler nice and steady, nice and lined up, and use a really light pencil line. I'm going to go a little darker just for the sake of this video. You might not even be able to see it then, but that's the line, and it probably even lighter than that. You want to be able to see it, but you also want to be able to erase it. So we're lining up those little tick marks as best as we can. You don't want to just measure one side and start doing lines like this, because you're going to have wonky lines going up and down. It's going to be really confusing, and it'll totally defeat the purpose of this assignment. You don't want to defeat the purpose. Oops. So I can get it to refocus. There we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do my lines, and then we'll kind of skip ahead so you don't have to keep watching me just draw a bunch of lines, because that gets very boring. Okay, so I have all of my vertical lines drawn. Now I need to do the other lines that are going across this way. So same exact thing. I'm going to flip my paper over this way, and we're going to measure 1.5 inch intervals. Here we go, as long as I have it lined up here. Whoops, the tricky part is lining it up. Okay, making sure it's nice and straight. All right, so we have a 1.5, 3. We'll go to 4.5, 6, 7.5, to 9, 10.5, to 12. Who thought we would be doing math and art? Math and art are actually very strongly related in different ways, but more than you'd think. Okay. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 sections, which is good. And then we are going to be cutting these down eventually. So again, don't worry about that. We're just going to measure out our grid first, and then we will chop off what we don't need, because everyone's will be slightly smaller than 12 by 18. Okay, same thing. I'm going to measure along the bottom here, 1.5, 3, etc. And then I will draw my lines just like I did before. Okay, I'm almost done. Again, I'm lining up those little tick marks that we made, trying to keep my boxes nice and square. It's okay if there's a teeny bit off, like it doesn't have to be absolute perfection. I mean, you're trying to get it as close as you can, but we're also human, right? We're keeping our lines nice and light, lining up those marks. Beautiful. Okay, now we have our grid, right? But we are drawing slightly larger. So this is where you have to remember, right? It's 7 by 10. So that actually means it's going to be 7 boxes by 10 boxes tall, okay? So we know it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We know this part we're actually not going to need. So if you want, I mean, you could make like a little shade mark or, you know, erase those lines or something just to remind you if you want. Now your dimensions might be slightly different. Yours might be a little bigger or a little smaller depending on your image. It might be more skinny or fat or maybe more of a square, which is totally fine. It doesn't necessarily mean less work because you still have to draw your lines and figure out the math of everything. Plus, every image is a little bit different. A large image doesn't necessarily mean it's harder. Sometimes smaller images are actually more difficult. Okay, that's pretty good. So I have a little bit of a blank space here, and I like having blank space. The reason for that is because this is an area where I can test things. I can test out pencils. I can play around with my blending stump. It's just a nice area, and eventually we will chop that off. So the dimensions of our final work will be that size. We're going to start drawing. Go. Okay. And you're literally doing it like you did with the practice. And when we practiced our contour lines, sometimes it might be beneficial, especially if you take like a dry erase and you just say like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then maybe along the top here, I'll say A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm not going to worry about H. I'll just leave that blank. Okay. And now if I look here, and I'll label these quick, just a very light A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Again, we're going to keep this light. We want to be able to erase that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So from here, now we need to figure out where we're going to start. Let's say I'm going to start with the top of the cow's head. We're going to D2. Okay, so I'm looking for D2, and I'm just looking at this box, D2, kind of that shape. It goes up to about, not quite halfway, about right about there. And you're just kind of treating it like a puzzle piece. I'm just going to do contour lines right now. I'm not going to do anything else. There's a little bit in this corner of E2, just a tiny bit. I'm going to go to E3. E3. Something like this shape. We do it nice and light lines because that allows us then to edit and make changes. It goes down a little bit and this goes up, box by box. Now I'm looking at this one here. It's like a little hump or a little hill. Using those words, instead of saying ear, say hill or curve or zigzag or straight line. Using those words is going to help you draw using your right brain. So those skills we learned previously, it's going to be really useful. This is kind of like a backwards C shape. Going across here, it goes to about here. So I know I'm going to have to connect that C-shaped curve. Something like that. So that, in the end, is going to be that ear. And I'll just keep going. All right, so this took me about 20 minutes or so to kind of sketch out this rough outline here, these little tags. Anything kind of man-made sometimes is a little tricky to do with this, but I just did the major outlines, right? I didn't really do any shading. I'm not doing any details like whiskers or hair or anything just yet. And once you have it all drawn out, your next goal is to kind of double check things. So looking at your image, you know, what is off? What do you need to include? Like, I know I missed the horizon line here, so I'll just kind of start there with E6. So I'm on E6 here, and I'm going to kind of double check that box, make sure the size looks good, and it does. And I'm going to just draw that horizon line off in the distance. It kind of crosses over that intersection there, those intersecting lines. That angle looks pretty good. Let's look at 5A here. There's kind of like, I think, kind of a blurry pine tree up here that I'll kind of sketch in. Okay. Just those major shapes. You know, I don't need every little thing drawn in here because that's where shading comes into play. So once you have everything the way it needs to be, double check it, and then you can start your shading. And from there, it's all a matter of building up your values. Like, okay, I know the inside of this bell here is going to be very, very dark. So feel free to start dark or start light. I don't really mind how you start. You just want to make sure, everything's in the right place before you start. And I think that's the biggest problem that students face is they either don't measure correctly or, even after they measure correctly, they go in and they start using their left brain and they're like, well, this is what a cow looks like. And they draw, some kind of silly cartoon cow. When really, it's actually a lot of these really strange shapes, right? Like the nose of the cow, I kind of had to stop for a second and be like, nope, yep, like these nostrils are really big, right? Because the nose is in the foreground, that's foreshortening, and you don't really see all of the eye on this side. So making sure it's just the side of the eye. It's going to come down to shading to make this look realistic. So just something to keep in mind. This is going to take some time, and a big part of the grade is, hey, did you use the grid? Did you actually follow the grid, right? Did you follow, if I look at the grid, I should be able to see, yep, okay, this box looks the same as that box. And this box looks the same as that box. I can easily tell if you used the grid or didn't. And you want to make sure that you are definitely following it, not just drawing what you think you see, but what you are actually seeing in front of you.